Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei becomes Lilich King and get harem with new girls? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Tristanbakan for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. What started out as a normal evening turned into a full-on battle for survival, with the fallen angel Kokabile Sona and her peerage managed to put up a barrier to contain the fighting, while Rias Issei and the others were holding off Kokabile and his army of road exorcists and priests, along with several fallen angels that were loyal to him. Things were not going so good in their favor. Irina had been hurt seriously by the crazy priest Fried Kiba, and Zenobia had been seriously injured by the fallen angels. Kaneko had been injured by the two massive Cerberus doges that Kokabile brought with him. Asia was doing her best to heal. Irina, Rias, and Aquino were both panting pretty heavily, trying to catch their breath with their clothes torn in several places, revealing their assets. And finally Issei was standing in front of the monster that hurt his friends and his army. The boosted gear was activated, but he couldn't achieve balance breaker. He just glared at the fallen angel leader, with him returning an evil smirk, with his glowing red eyes staring down at him. Kokabile. Ha 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 ha. Pathetic, and here I actually thought you would actually put up a fight, but here you are all beaten down before I even thought you were actually going to make me take this seriously. And you, Red Dragon Emperor. You are without a doubt the weakest user in existence. Truly pathetic. I actually thought you might be actually put up a fight, but here you are down on one knee bowing before your true master. I should just go ahead in your measurable existence. Issei just glared up at the fallen angel leader. He was seething with hatred. He hurt the people he cared about more than anything else in this world. He kept thinking to himself, if only he had more power, if only he could wield the power necessary to protect those he cares about, if only he had an army at his command, he wouldn't without a doubt crush his enemies and all who stood before him, and protect those he cared about with everything, even if it cost him his soul, his life, whatever it took, whatever cost, he would give it, even if it meant giving up his own soul. Issei, you Kokabile! I'll die before I let you hurt any of my friends, my loved ones. Issei screamed at the top of his lungs at the fallen angel leader, all the while he just gave him an evil smile, and with that he decided to grant Issei's wish. Kokabile, ha ha ha. As you wish, boy. And with that he readied a powerful mass of light spear and threw it straight at Issei. Everyone immediately widened their eyes in horror and shock at what happened next. It pierced right through his chest, going in and out of the other side, sending him flying all the way across to the other side of the school grounds. Rias, Aquino, Asia's Irina, Kaneko, and hell, even Zenobia couldn't believe what they just saw. The person they cared about the most, the one that saved Rias's life from an unwanted marriage, who gave Asia a home where she had nowhere else to go, the one who accepted Aquino for who she was, not what she was, the kind and carrying upperclassman who put his life on the line to protect his junior Kaneko, and the person who truly cared for his childhood friend Irina. And even though things got off on the wrong foot at first, he was willing to put his life on the line to save Zenobia. Kiba couldn't believe what he just witnessed. His best friend, the person who gave him the strength to face his own demons, was pierced through the chest by a massive light spear and possibly killing him. Everyone, Fried, ha 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 ha. Search that shitty devil, right, ha ha ha. Fried began laughing like a maniac. Everybody immediately was too stunned at what just happened to even utter a word. Tears came out of their eyes, and they were still trying to process what just happened. Kokabile immediately ordered his followers to capture everybody present, and they did so accordingly. They didn't even bother struggling because they were still in a state of shock and they couldn't believe what just happened. Is meanwhile back with Issei. He laid on the ground with a massive hole in his chest and blood gushing out everywhere. Blood immediately poured out of his toes and mouth, with his eyes wide open and his mouth agape. He didn't know how far he'd been thrown, but he was on the other side of the school, far from where his friends and loved ones were. He couldn't believe he was just one shot at. Just like that. Was he truly that weak? Was he truly pathetic? Issei moved up his right arm, reaching for the sky, calling out for anybody to save him and give him the power he needed. Issei whispers weakly, please, I'm begging you, anybody, somebody, please give me the power I need to save the people I care about. And then something occurred. It started to get really, really cold around the area he was out, and then a voice called out of nowhere that only he could hear. So you wish to commune with the dead, you wish to have the power you need necessary in order to save the people you care about. A dark and powerful voice spoke out, then noticed a light enveloping him, and the voice spoke out, Valkyr. Bring him to the top of Ice Crown, I like him, and I believe he is the one. It was then that several figures with wings emerged from the light. They were all women wearing bits and pieces of armor, and almost ghost-like skin. They reminded him of angels or like Valkyrie he had read about, from Norse mythology. The Valkyrie lifted Issei gently off the ground and took him in the air. A portal then opened up above them, and they all went through. When they emerged from the other side, Issei saw a massive castle-like fortress. Before him this was Iceground Citadel. Little did he know that all this would be his soon. Once they emerged from the portal, Issei began to feel something strange. His wounds started to heal themselves automatically, but you could tell that a massive object had pierced through his skin. This was going to leave a massive scar on the front and behind of his body, showing with a spear appears through. Issei then noticed something. Massive amounts of skeletons and undead minions were wandering around. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. It was some kind of undead army. Issei, what the hell, where am I? The voice immediately began to speak again, and told him to meet him at the top of the spire at the Frozen Throne. You will find that out soon enough. My Valkyrie will escort you through the citadel, and take you to the top of the spire. There you will meet me at the Frozen Throne, where we will talk about your situation. Issei didn't know what was going on, but for some reason he decided to listen to the mysterious voice and headed up the massive amounts of stairs leading to the entrance of the citadel. He was being escorted by these massive winged-like women who were called Valkyr. He had to admit these are some beautiful and look and women. Even though they were a little bit taller than him, they continued up the stairs until they got to the entrance. Once inside, he was greeted with the massive halls of the citadel. Issei didn't know what was going on, but for some reason he decided to listen to the mysterious voice and headed up the massive amounts of stairs leading to the entrance of the citadel. He was being escorted by these massive winged-like women who Issei then saw dark armored warriors and more undead roaming the halls. A lot of them were looking his way, which made Issei very nervous. They continued down the hallway until they came upon a massive spire made completely of ice. This had to be the center or the bottom of the spire. They made their way around the spire towards a room that had an elevator-like platform. The group then proceeded to make their way to the top of the spire. Once they got off the elevator, they made their way across a bridge connecting to the icy spire. Issei and the Valkyr made their way inside of the icy spire and stood on top of some kind of center platform in the middle. The next thing that happened shocked him greatly. The group then teleported to the very top of Icecrown Citadel. Once of the very top, he was greeted to a sight he couldn't believe. Massive amounts of undead warriors, more dark armored knights, massive bugs, spider-like people, more Valkyr. He even saw undead elves that were also vampires. He also saw massive giants that were blue. The males looked like massive Vikings, and there were also massive females too. Some appeared to be sorcerers and others for warriors. Just like the males, he was told that these are Frost Vrykels, some of the most powerful soldiers in the undead army that was called the Scourge, as he found out. However, his attention soon darted away from the undead army and then turned his attention toward a group that came towards him. The group consisted of a massive spider beetle-like creature, beautiful vampiric elf, with massive bat-like wings she was. However, his attention soon darted away from the undead army and then turned his attention toward a group that came towards him. The group consisted of a massive spider beetle-like creature, beautiful vampiric elf, with massive bat-like wings. She was covered in crimson robes. The next he saw a massive undead dragon that glowed in icy blue. The next was a snake-like woman, a small armored figure that was a dwarf, and a massive orc that wore the same armor as the dwarf. However, his was red and the dwarf's was blue. The next one was a massive undead being made completely out of bones that had a massive bone-like axe with several skulls for its heads and massive bone-sharp-like wings sprouting from its back, coated with blue energy. The next two he saw were undead lich. For some reason he could tell that one was a male and the other was a female. Then two massive dragons, one green and one black, that was also covered in armor. This came flying in and landed on either side of the group, followed by two more undead dragons. These two were a little bit smaller compared to the bigger one. He then saw a massive armored figure that looked similar to the orc in red armor, but this one's skin was a little bit darker, and his eyes were glowing blue, and his armor was darker as well. The final member of the group appeared to be a zombie-looking scientist with his lower jaw completely gone and his tongue hanging out. Issei couldn't believe what was standing in front of him. This was quite the group of interesting characters, to say the least. The group then made way for 5 women that came forward, and what Issei saw almost took his breath away. Beauty saw in each of these women one of them was a Valkyr like those that were escorting him, but she had a bit more flair to her, and he could tell that the other Valkyrie held her in high regard. Perhaps she was the leader of these women. The next one, elf-looking woman with pinkish-purple skin with green hair and green eyes. The next one was also an elf. She wore crimson-red armor, and her hair was ginger-red. She also had green eyes and beautiful white skin. The next one right beside her was also an elf, but her skin was darker, almost like a mix of both dark blue and light blue. She had beautiful blue eyes. And finally the last woman he saw really took his breath away. She almost looked just like Rias with her long beautiful crimson hair and golden crimson-like armor. She was truly a sight to behold. They also joined the others, making their way for Issei. Then the voice spoke again, but this time it came from atop the frozen stairs. I suppose a welcome is in order, so welcome. Issei Haidu. Welcome to my world. Issei immediately looked to where the voice was coming from, and what he saw above the frozen stairs set on top of the frozen throne was an armored individual with a spiked helmet and eyes that were glowing dark blue, and what rested beside him was a massive two-handed long sword that seemed to radiate with power. This was the Lich King. Issei widened his eyes in shock. He could literally feel and also see his arrow. It was a dark runic blue that screamed death itself. Issei was wondering who the heck this guy was and why was he brought here. Issei widened his eyes in shock. He could literally feel and also see his arrow. It was a dark runic blue that screamed death itself. Issei was wondering who the heck this guy was and why was he brought here. Issei W. Who are? And where am I? The Lich King let out a small smile underneath his helm, though no one could see it due to his face being completely covered and you couldn't even tell what expression he was having. Lich King, I am the Lich King and you are in Ice-Crowned Citadel in the Arctic continent of Northrend. Issei couldn't believe what he just heard. Was he in some other world surrounded by an entire undead army? He had to get back to everybody to help them and save them before it was too late. He decided to speak up. Though he had to be careful with what he said, he didn't want to anger this being because if he knew he did, he could tell that he would not last 1 second against him, though he would go down trying. Issei, why have you brought me here? I need to get back home to save the people I care about. Lich King, that is why I brought you here in the first place. Issei Haidu. You said that you needed power at any cost, even if it was your own soul, so that you could protect your loved ones, or was I mistaken? Issei hesitated for a brief moment, but then spoke up again. Issei, yes, I did say that. Even if it would cost me my own soul, even my own life. Why did you bring me here? The Lich King chuckled to himself. Lich King, there is potential in you. Despite you being the weakest Red Dragon Emperor. However, that can all change. With my help. Issei became confused at what he was saying. It was then that he noticed all the undead minions as well as the group of girls backing away, making room for what was about to happen. The Lich King immediately got up from his throne and took out his sword that was impaled in the ice next to him, and descended down the frozen stairs until he was a couple feet away from Issei. Both of them continued to stare at one another for a brief moment, until the Lich King spoke up. Lich King, to tell you the truth, I have had my eye on you for quite some time. You have potential unlike any other being in this universe. You have the potential to raise the worlds to the ground if you so choose so. Or you could unite races under one banner and protect those you care about. You have the potential to become the new Lich King. Issei was immediately shocked at what he just heard. Issei, what? What do you mean I had the potential to become the new Lich King? Are you saying you could give me the power I need to protect those I care about? The Lich King nodded his head. Lich King, yes. Although you must prove yourself first, in order to become the new Lich King and lead the Scourge. You must first defeat me in single combat. Only by defeating me and claiming the mantle of the Lich King can you truly have the power you desire. But be warned, this power comes at a price. If you defeat me, it will cost you your soul and you will be damned for all of eternity. Tell me, are you willing to make such a sacrifice if it means saving those you care about? Issei thought it over for a brief moment. If what this Lich King that was true, he would become partially undead and his spirit scarred and damned for all of eternity, but he didn't care. He would do whatever it took to save the people he cared about. Issei looked directly at the Lich King with a serious look on his face and spoke with authority. Issei, yes. I don't care what it takes. I want the power necessary to save those I care about. The Lich King smiled underneath the home of domination. He knew he found his successor, and he had a feeling that this battle would be legendary. Lich King, very well. Issei Haidu, prepare yourself for the battle of your life. But before we begin our battle, this will help you. The Lich King raised Frostmourne towards Issei. At dark mystic powers flowed from the blade towards Issei. He became a little nervous at the power that seeped in him, but then it hit him. This power was beyond anything he could imagine. Then armor began form all around Issei. The armor was dark and resembled some of the dark armored warriors that were known as Death Knights. Once the transformation was complete, Issei was now a Death Knight himself. The Lich King turned his head towards one of his Death Knights. Lich King, High Overlord Darien Mograine, but now identified Death Knight known as Darien Mograine, stepped forward, got down on one knee and bowed before his master. Darien, what is your will, my lord? Lich King, give him your sword. Your blade, the corrupted Ashbringer, is a worthy weapon for him to face man battle. Darien, yes, my lord. Darien stepped forward and handed his blade towards Issei. Darien, this weapon is known as the corrupted Ashbringer. This will be your weapon of choice to battle the god of death himself, the Lich King. Fight well, warrior. Issei took the blade and readied himself for combat. Both he and the Lich King started to circle one another slowly, and once they were in position they both stopped readying their blades and they both charged each other, letting out ferocious war cries. Once they met in the middle, their blade clashed. Meanwhile, back with Rias and the others, they still couldn't believe what just happened. Rias was still in a complete state of shock, and tears continued to pour out of her eyes. All of them were immediately brought before Kokabeel, and he continued to smirk evilly, showing his fangs, and his glowing red eyes shine brighter, and his 10 massive black wings spread from his back. Kokabeel, ha 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 ha, who would have thought this generation's Red Dragon Emperor would be so weak? Especially you two. Why fight so hard for a group of losers who don't even know they lost their master? Everyone became confused at what he just said. That immediately snapped or touching back towards him. Irina and Xenoxia became confused at what he just said. Rias, what do you mean? Zenobia, Kokabeel, what is that supposed to mean? Kokabeel just smiled and turned his head away instantly. Kokabeel, oops, that just slipped right out. Irina, answer the question right now. Everyone, especially Zenobia, was taken aback by Irina's outburst. They immediately saw that she had continuous tears coming out for eyes. She had just lost her childhood friend and perhaps the boy she loved, though more than anything besides God. Now she wanted to know what he meant by that. Kokabeel started to laugh towards himself, and all of his minions continued to laugh out loud, confusing everybody. Elbow was going on, so without a doubt Kokabeel decided to spell the world's greatest secret. Kokabeel, ha 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 ha. I guess I am truly trying to start a war. Well, there's no point hiding it any longer. I might as well tell you the truth. In the previous war, God was himself killed along with the 4 great devil kings. Everyone immediately became wide-eyed and were completely shocked at what he just said. No more so than Asia, Irina, and Zenobia. It really struck deep for them, since all of them believed in God. Everyone couldn't believe what they just heard. Losing the one they cared about was hard enough. Now they were faced with the brutal reality that the God of the Bible was dead. Irina, what? Zenobia, no way, God is dead. Rias, he's what? God has been dead how? How is that even possible? You're lying. I've never heard anything about this. You've got to be lying. Kokabeel and his allies continued to laugh hysterically at their reactions. Kokabeel, back then the factions lost most of their high rank and leaders. Fallen angels and devils, except for their leaders. Pure angels could not increase their numbers, and pure blood devils are just as rare, aren't they? Asia timidly spoke up, still with tears in her eyes. Asia, that's not true. He can't be gone. Kokabeel, all sides have been ruined to the point where they have to rely on humans for survival. Angels, fallen angels, and devils, the leaders of the 3 factions, had to seal away this information. That way the people that praise God would keep on praying and the God-fearing humans would keep on fearing. As he said this, Asia, Zenobia, and Irina just couldn't take much more of this. They were visibly shaking from all this information, and from having to watch them one they loved die in front of their eyes. Zenobia, lies, they're all lies. Irina, it's not true. It can't be. Freed, oh, you better believe in devil bitches. Ha 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 ha. You should see the looks on your shitty ass faces. Right about now, ha 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 ha. Freed and the other lackeys continued to laugh hysterically at their reactions. Kokabeel, now try to remember, I couldn't care less about any of that, but draws me crazy is the fact that after God and those devil kings died, it was decided to stop the war. Why would they do something like that in the middle of winning? How dare they try to keep me from squashing my enemies just when it was getting fun? We would have won. Even that bastard Azazel declared there would never be another war. What the? Everyone was still in complete shock at the information that he just revealed. No one could even say a single word, but Asia decided to break the silence, and timidly asked the big question. Asia, God doesn't exist anymore, then where is the love that has been given to us coming from? Kokabeel just cracked a wicked smile at the girl and explained. Kokabeel. Heh. Michael has been holding his own so far. He's the one who's been keeping the angels and humans together, in God's stead. Irina and Zenobia became even more shocked at what he just said. Irina, Lord Michael the Archangel has been acting as God's agent. But that means all our prayers. Zenobia how can that be? Kokabeel. As long as the system works, prayers and exorcisms will endure to a certain extent. I'm sure someone has been listening. Asia couldn't take it anymore and just flat out fainted. Everyone immediately began worried. Rias, Asia, Aquino, Asia, wake up please. Zenobia and Irina looked over and felt sorry for her. They understood more than anyone there what she was feeling. They were surprised at it, and all right feigned to themselves. Zenobia, it's a natural reaction. Unsurprised that I can still think right now. Irina, same here. I just don't know what to do anymore. Kokabeel decided that enough information had been leaked. However, he decided to unveil one more surprise for Rias Gremory. Kokabeel. Well, now that's all said and done, I have one more surprise for you, Gremory. One of my subordinates has been dying to get their hands on you after what you did to her, and spoiling her fun after what she did to the Red Dragon Emperor, that is. Ha 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 ha. The attention was now on Rias. She became confused, but then she immediately widened her eyes in shock at what Kokabeel was talking about, or who he was talking about. Then realization started hit the others as well, except for Zenobia and Irina. They were confused at what he was talking about. It was then that he emotions for a female fallen angel to come forward. Rias, Aquino, and the others in the peerage completely went wide-eyed and full of shock with their mouths to the ground. There was no mistaking it. The person standing in front of them was Rainer. Rainer gave a wicked grin at the group, especially towards Rias. She began to walk forward towards her. What she got in front of her, she merely got down on one knee and started to speak. Rainer, well, if it isn't Rias Gremory, the red-headed bitch who thought she killed me. Rias was in complete shock. How was she alive? How was she here? She used her power of destruction to kill her. She did it herself, so why was she alive, and why was she here of all places? Rias, how are you alive? I killed you myself. Zenobia and Irina were shocked at what she just said. They decided to listen to the conversation to see what this was about. Rainer gave an evil grin, showing off her fangs. She decided to explain it since they were about to die anyway. Rainer, well, since you are about to die, I'll humor you for the last time. Just before your power of destruction impacted on its target, I was swiftly teleported away, leaving only behind a pile of feathers. But now that I'm back, I'll have the chance to resurrect that little insect Issei Hayadu, and torture him and break his heart all over again. Hell, perhaps I'll turn him into my personal dog and break his soul, until he can't take it anymore, and I'll make sure that you're alive just long enough so that you can see it. Everyone got very angry, especially Rias. This bitch, the very reason why Issei was killed in the first place. Now she threatened to bring him back from the dead only to use him as a personal dog. She would be damned before she would let that happen. Rias, you're the reason that my Issei has been suffering all this time. I'll kill you before I let you torture my love any more than you already have. I'll make sure to send your soul to hell personally, and that you are damned for all eternity. Everyone became outright shocked at her outburst, but no more Irina. She couldn't believe what she just heard. This fallen angel killed him and is the reason he became a devil and became a part of the supernatural world. She can believe it. The reasoning he's dead is because of her. She was beyond furious now. She wanted to back up Rias and helping her, sending her soul to hell. If this woman was beyond redemption, all she wanted now was revenge, to avenge the man she loved. Rainer just laughed at her and the others, and they continued to glare at her. She turned her eye towards Kokabeel and asked him if it was time for them to be disposed of. Rainer, my lord, is it time for us to dispose of them yet? If so, may I offer a small suggestion before you do? It's as if Kokabeel read her mind and gave out an evil smile. Kokabeel, Of course, boys, have your fun with them before their corpses are disposed of. The girls immediately went wide-eyed in horror of what he just said. A lot of the exorcists and fallen angels had evil smiles, especially Freed. All of them started to get a little horny. It slowly made their way towards the girls. Now all of them were starting to become frightened. They tried to twist and turn their way out of their shackles, but they couldn't. The exorcists and the fallen angels start to get on top of them and just began to rip to clothes off. They panicked and screamed. However, just before things could get much worse, something happened, something that would change the fate of the entire supernatural world itself. The sky began to darken outside of the barrier that Sona and her peerage set up. They all began to notice as lightning and thunderstorms began to form. Then something happened. It started to get cold, really, really cold, and snow started to fall from the sky. Sona, what the? Snow? However, it wasn't just that people on the outside that noticed the sudden change in the weather. Everybody on the inside of the barrier noticed it. To all the exorcists sent following angels stopped what they began to get really cold. Kokobile and Rainier were wondering what the heck was going on. Kokobile, what the hell? Rainier, why did it get so cold all of us suddenly? Just then a massive lightning strike pierced through the barrier, striking the courtyard right across from everybody. It shocked everybody around the area. However, it was then that it heard loud, massive footsteps coming out of the forest. They all turned their attention towards what was making that sound. Everyone noticed that an individual was coming out of the forest. Once he made his way out, everybody could see him clear his day. The girls were beyond shocked who it was, and so was everybody else. It was Issei. However, something seemed off about him. He began walking slowly towards the assembled army. For some reason, no one tried to stop him. He had this aura around him that screamed death itself. Even the girls were confused and could not utter a single word. They just couldn't believe that Issei was up and walking. His hair covered his eyes so they couldn't see his expression. He did suddenly stopped right in the middle of everybody. The entire army decided to surround him, but they didn't make a move. It was then the ice started to form from underneath Issei. It spread out until it got right in front of them, and then massive shards of ice sprouted up right in front of him, and then the ice cracked and broke, revealing a massive sword. The sword's aura screamed death itself. It was Frostmourne. However, something seemed off about him. He began walking slowly towards the assembled army. For some reason, no one tried to stop him. He had this aura around him that screamed death itself. Even the girls were confused and could not utter a single word. Issei lifted up his face so that everyone can see when he began to read the inscription that was on the blade, and what he said next sent fear into the girls' hearts. Issei, whomsoever takes up this blade shall wield power eternal. Just as the blade rends flesh, so must power scar the spirit. Issei then began to reach for the blade. Once he grabbed the hilt, he yanked it from its icy, sending shockwaves across the entire school ground, sending everybody flying backwards. It was then the armor began to form around him, armor that screamed death itself. The armor was silver, adorned with many skulls, and a long dark blue cape extended out from his back. And then something began to glow in the middle of the ice, where Issei released Frostmourne. A dark and scary-looking helmet began to float in the center. It was the helm of domination. Issei grabbed the helm and placed the crown upon his head. When he opened his eyes, they were an icy runic blue underneath the helmet, and his armor, his skin started to turn pale, and his hair turned completely white. Soon this world would now know the wrath of the Lich King. Shock and disbelief. That is what everyone was feeling right now. All the girls couldn't believe what they were seeing, and Kiba was as still as a statue. A moment ago they saw Issei get impelled with a massive light spear and sent all the way across the other side of the school. Now here he was with his wounds fully recovered and now encased in a full suit of dark death-like armor, and an icy aura covered him from head to toe, and his eyes now glowed a bright icy blue. And that sword, the sword he held in his hand, screamed death itself. All of the exorcists and some of the fallen angels completely trembled with fear. Kokobile, Freed, and even Rainier were secretly trembling with fear, and so Kokobile decided to break the silence and demanded answers. Kokobile, what the hell? I killed you. You should be dead. How are you alive? Issei, aka the Lich King, said nothing and continued to stare. He then lifted up his sword, pointing it directly at Kokobile and Rainier. It started snowing and the temperature began to drop. Then the snow itself started to flow into the blade, and the blade started to turn blue. The Lich King said nothing and continued to stare. He then lifted up his sword, pointing it directly at Kokobile and Rainier. It started snowing and the temperature began to drop. Then the snow itself started to flow into the blade, and the blade. Issei then impelled Frostmourne into the ground, sending massive shockwaves throughout the area, knocking everyone off their feet. It started to form everywhere on the ground and the snowstorm intensified. Then the ground started to shake and to break apart. The next thing that happened shocked everybody even further. A massive bone-like arm with massive claws appeared out of the icy ground, and then another, and then it started to pull itself out on a knee the ground, revealing a massive undead dragon. In between the bones of the dragon a runic blue color glowed from the massive undead beast, and then its eyes opened, revealing a massive blue slits, and then several portals opened up behind Issei and the undead dragon, and what came through was beyond anything that anybody could have expected. An entirely massive undead army came through, accompanied by undead Nerubians, Death Knights, Necromancers, Frost Giants, Frost Vrykul Emerger Warriors, Frost WYRMS Ghouls, Undead Liches, Skeleton Warriors, Vampiric Undead Dark Fallen Sanlane Elves, Varghul Warriors, Bone Giants, Valkyrwire Battle Maidens, Blue Dragons, and Bone Wraths. Issei then finally spoke, but it was not his normal voice that everyone knew and loved. This voice was darker and more evil. Like this was the voice of the Lich King, and the girls especially were beyond frightened by it. Issei, I suppose welcome is in order, so welcome insects, welcome to my world. It sent shivers up everyone's spines when he talked. Kokobile decided that he needs to act quickly. Kokobile, freed. Quickly snapping out of his haze, he quickly turned to Kokobile. Freed, you called. I'm here. Kokobile, freed, this is our last piece of entertainment. Use the Excalibur and wipe out all of these rotting corpses. Freed became excited at the thought of wiping out this devil brat. He's been nothing but trouble for him since day one, and now he finally gets the chance to debate him once and for all. He walked over and took up the golden sword. Freed, you know that fancy Excalibur with those ridiculous specs? Surprise, I just got one as a gift, and I'm going to use it to wipe out you and your entire army of undead rotting corpses. It was then that one of Issei's servants stepped forward. It was a massive spider-like beetle with a frozen blue likeness to it. This was Anubarak, ancient king of the Nerubian Empire. Anubarak, pathetic mortal, the scourge will devour all who stand in our path. Freed turned towards Anubarak, and he had a disgusted look on his face, wondering what he was looking at. Freed, just what the hell are you supposed to be? Anubarak didn't like Freed comment and let out a fierce roar. This somewhat intimidated Freed a little bit, and scared all of the exorcists and the girls, but just before things could get out of hand, Issei held up his hand and told his comrade to hold. Issei, hold, he's mine. All of his minions stood back. Issei took a few steps forward and pointed his blade at Freed, and Freed, being the arrogant asshole he was, just smiled, being all cocky. Freed, just because you got some new fancy armor and an even fancier sword, it doesn't mean there is any better than mine, ha 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 ha. Issei gripped the hilt off Frostmourne with both of his hands and took a stance, Freed doing the same. They both stood there for a second until Freed charged at him with full speed. The girls, especially Rias, were worried. She tried calling out to him so he can move. Rias, I see, run away, get out of there. However, he didn't run, he just stood there. Everything went in slow motion for a minute. Freed got in front of him and swung down his blade, and so did Issei, but what happened next shocked everyone, especially Kiba, Irina, and Zenobia the most. Issei swung down his blade, shattering Excalibur, and slicing into Freed's chest, leaving a massive gash with his blood spewing everywhere, killing him instantly. Rias especially was beyond shocked that he actually killed someone, even though he was their enemy. Issei never killed his eyes, never. And it horrified her, and the next thing that happened put even more fear in everyone. Issei walked over to the body of Freed. He then hovered his sword over the corpse, and the next thing that happened was that a blue mist came out of Freed's body. An end to the sword. Frostmourne was draining him of his soul so that he will forever be damned for all the eternity. Issei continued to hold the sword over his body. Then dark electric energies came forth and shot from the blade towards Freed's body. Once the dark electricity ended, nothing happened for a brief second, and then it happened. Freed's body started to move again. It started to twitch until it slowly got up, even turned into an undead ghoul, adding another soldier into the ranks of the scourge. The girls couldn't believe what they just witnessed. Issei just brought Freed back to life as an undead zombie. Issei then turned his attention towards Rainier. She immediately became scared out of her mind. Those icy blue eyes tore through her very soul. Issei was beyond furious when he saw her. She would know the Lich King's wrath, but first he had to deal with Kokobile's army. Issei raised Frostmourne, pointing at the enemy, and ordered his undead minions of the Scourge to attack. Issei, FOE the Scourge, the Frost Vrykul. Nerubians, skeleton soldiers, liches, death knights, ghouls, and other undead minions let out a fearsome war cry that shook the world around them and charged. Many of the exorcists ran away in a fear, others decided to hold the ground and fight off the undead. The Valkyrie engaged with Kokobil's loyal fallen angels. To say it was a one sudden fight was an understatement. Many of the exorcists were outright cut down, and practically all of the fallen angels stood no chance against the Valkyrie. Kokobil couldn't believe that his army was being cut down and swatted away like insects. The front line of his forces were completely destroyed. The Nerubians tunnel underneath the ground only to come up right in front of their victims, taking them underneath the ground. The undead soldiers cut down every exorcist got in their way. The undead frost WIRMS came swooping down and chopping on their victims and blowing them away with their frost breath. The frost Vrykle let out a fearsome war cry and charged straight into the enemies, decimating them. As all this was going on, the girls couldn't believe what they witnessed. This wasn't a battle, this was a slaughter. Then they witnessed something that terrified them even more. The fallen exorcist and fallen angels began to be resurrected into undead to join the ranks of the scourge and turning on their comrades. Kiba, what the hell? It's nothing but pure chaos. Zenobia, you're telling me? I can't believe what I'm seeing. Kanuko, let's just be thankful that these rotting corpses are on our side. Irena, those women with the light and dark wings, they look like angels and fallen angels, but like Valkyries of Norse mythology. I wonder? Zenobia looked towards Irena and she to her, and they began thinking to themselves, can actually become one of those women. Since she learned the truth, it's almost like she's lost the will to live, but perhaps she can find a new cause to fight for, even if it means servitude. It would being close to the man Irena loved, and perhaps, maybe even Zenobia could have a new purpose in her life. Meanwhile, Asia Aquino and Ria still couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Issei had a massive hole in his chest, and was presumed dead only for him to come back not even 5 minutes later, and now he has a whole undead army under his command, and this power, they can feel it. It felt dark, dangerous, and evil, and for some reason they could feel a small tenderness of warmth. Meanwhile, back with Kokobil and Rainier, they were starting to freak out. Rainier more so than Kokobil. Kokobil, enough of this, I will deal with him myself. The fallen angel leader spreaded his wings and flew down towards the battlefield. Once he made his way through, he found the Lich King and landed across from him. Issei and Kokobil stared down one another, both glaring at each other. Kokobil, I don't know how the hell this is possible, but you and your rotting corpses are no match for me. Issei, we shall see. Kokobil spread all 10 of his massive wings and flew into the air. Rainier, however, was scared out of her mind. She spread her wings and attempted to flee. This did not go unnoticed by Issei. He immediately called forth one of the female frost Vrykle. Her name was Svala. She stepped forth and bowed before her king and death god. Svala, my liege, what is your bidding? Issei immediately raised his sword and pointed it towards the fleeing Rainier. Issei, you will take several of the frost Vrykle and bring that wretched woman before me alive. Do not fail me, or it will be your undoing. Svala immediately bowed her head and understood her orders. She immediately went and gathered some frost Vrykle and several Vargul, and went off to capture Rainier. Meanwhile, back with Issei, he made his way through the battlefield, cutting down every fallen angel and exorcist that got in his way, and raised them into undead scourge while claiming their souls with Frostmourne. He carved his way through to Kokobil. He too carved his way through the battlefield, taking down the undead until he came face to face with the Lich King himself. Issei, so the leader of this pathetic rebellion finally arrives. Shall I lay down Frostmourne and throw myself at your mercy? Kokobil, Kokobil, you're a damned monster, turning my followers into undead. You will not stop me. A new war will be forged today. My war. And you will not stop me. Issei raised Frostmourne and pointed it directly at Kokobil. Issei, we shall see. And with that, the both of them charged straight forward at each other. Kokobil raised his light sword and Issei raised Frostmourne. Both of them brought down their blades toward each other. However, once they collided, a loud slashing strike was heard, and the sound of metal shuddering. The undead and the remaining living forces, as well as Rias and her group, looked towards where that sound was, only to see Issei and Kokobil several feet apart with their backs facing each other, and their blagged outstretched. Nothing happened for a brief moment, but then all of a sudden a large slash mark made its way across Kokobil's chest and blood spewed out. He collapsed to the ground dead. Everyone was in complete and utter shock. Issei just managed to kill one of the leaders of the Gregory with just one strike. Issei lowered his weapon and turned around and stepped towards the fallen corpse of Kokabil. He raised his weapon over the corpse, and drained it of his soul. Another one of Issei's enemies had been draining of their soul into his runeblade. Frostmourne. It was then that Issei turned towards the group of Frostvrykle led by Svala. With them they had a beaten and broken Rainier. There were visible cuts across her body. She had a broken nose and blood came pouring out of her mouth. She also had a black eye and her wings were torn to shreds. She was brought before Issei. She was forced on her knees, kneeling before him. Svala and the others knelt before their death god. Rainier looked up with complete fear into the icy blue eyes of the Lich King, who just stared back at her. Silence enveloped the area for what felt like an eternity. In reality, it only lasted a few minutes. Rice and the others started to walk over, only to be stopped by several undead soldiers and Nerubians. They prepared themselves for a fight just in case, but Issei held up his hand, telling his forces to hold. Issei, hold! The undead immediately stopped in their tracks and made way for Rias and the others, but they didn't move from their spots. They continued to watch the scene between Issei and Rainier. The tension in the air was definitely noticeable. It was then that Issei decided to break the silence and speak. He let out a dark chuckle which honestly scared the girls and Kiba. Issei chuckles. Ironic, isn't it? I was once at your mercy and you killed me without a second thought. How the tables have turned. I delight in the irony. Rainier. Issei, please. I was only following orders. I was afraid I was going to be killed if I didn't. I really did enjoy that date we went on. Rainier tried begging for her life, even showing the bracelet that he bought for her. However, Issei wasn't falling for it. Issei, pathetic. Do not take me for a fool, fallen angel. I see through your lies. Never again will you manipulate me. Now you will know endless torment like never before. Frostmourne hungers. Issei raised his sword above his head, preparing to strike her down, but instead of killing her, she will be made as an example. He impaled her in the chest with his sword. Every one of Issei's friends and loved ones couldn't believe that he actually stabbed her. Her soul immediately began to leave her body, but that's not all it did. It seemed that the inside of her body began to burn on the inside, eventually making its way to the outside, consuming current flames. Her anguished cries could be heard across the entire school grounds as she burned. Once the flames subsided, all that was left was but a burnt and rotting corpse. Her wings were completely and utterly destroyed, as if they never existed. Her hair was gone. Her white skin was now covered in dark black and burnt skin. Basically, she looks like what happened to Bolvar after he was burned alive by the dragons. Rias and the others couldn't believe what they just witnessed. They began shaking in pure fear. Issei then turned his attention to Svala. He motioned for her to step forward. Svala, my liege, I have done as you asked, and now beseech you for your blessing. Issei, you have done well. And indeed you have proven yourself worthy of the task ahead of you. Your obedience and loyalty assigned to your dedication. Indeed you are worthy of this charge. Issei raised Frostmourne over her. The blade started to glow, and a crimson dark-like energy poured out from the blade, and went towards Svala. All of the other Vrykle and Valkyrie knew what this meant, and were beyond thrilled to witness this. Issei, arise, and forever be known as Svala Sorrowgrave. What happened next shocked the girls even more. Svala Sorrowgrave, as she was now known, was transformed into a Valkyrie. Once the transformation was complete, she immediately rose to her feet, flapping her wings. Hovering in the air, she was beyond overjoyed and very grateful towards her master. Svala Sorrowgrave, the sensation is beyond my imagining. I am yours to command, my king. Issei raised his sword and pointed towards Rainier, who was still suffering and lying on the ground. Issei, your first task is to take this worthless husk back to Iceground. She will serve as an example. You will suspend her above the frozen throne. She will serve as a warning to any and all of my enemies. Svala bowed towards her king. Slava Sorrowgrave, it will be done, my lord. The newly created Valkyrie immediately picked up the rotting husk of Rainier and started to drag her away. Two necromancers immediately opened up a portal that led back to Iceground. She dragged her through the portal, taking her to the frozen throne. It was then that one of Issei's servants came over to address him. It was a lich, and his name was Kel'Thuzad. He came over and bowed before his master. Kel'Thuzad, my lord. What should we do about this group here? He said, well, pointing to Rias and the others. Everyone immediately started to become on guard, but they were still scared out of their minds of what they just witnessed. Issei looked over at everybody. He immediately saw the fear in their eyes. He immediately raised his hand and told his forces not to lay a hand on them. Issei, be at ease, Kel'Thuzad, they are of no threat. It was then Issei's other servants came along to join the group. Issei started walking towards his friend, and albeit timidly they started walking towards him as well until he stopped in front of them and they, him. Rias decided to speak for the group. Rias, Issei, is that you? Issei impaled Frostmourne in the ground right beside him. He then reached for the helm of domination and slowly took it off his head, revealing his new features which greatly shocked everybody. He had pale ghostly like skin and his hair was silver and a little bit longer, and once they got a good look at him they noticed he was taller. He was now at least 6 feet 7 inches in height. Everybody couldn't believe what they were looking at. Was this really Issei, the same happy loving pervert that they all fell in love with? It was then that several women came up right beside Issei. One of them had striking crimson red hair just like Rias. Another one was a vampiric elf with massive wings coming out of her back. Another one was an elf with bluish-like skin, and another one was a Valkyrie. Akino decided to ask who these people were. Akino, Issei, who are these people? The girls that accompanied Issei decided to introduce themselves one by one. The first to speak up was the red-headed woman. She was beautiful. Her crimson hair flowed from the back of her head down. Halfway of her back she was dressed in golden battle armor with 2 distinct horns coming out of her head. This was Queen Alexstrasza of the Red Dragon flight, and of all dragons her assets were well defined. She had the same size if not a little bit bigger than Rias, well-defined curves and a beautiful plump ass. Alexstrasza, greetings. I am Queen Alexstrasza of the Red Dragon flight, and like yourselves I'm one of Issei's lovely queens. The girls, especially Rias, were beyond shocked at what she just said. She was one of Issei's queens, that means she was one of his lovers, but then they also remembered that she gestured to them as also being his lovers, so that calmed them down, but it still shocked them that Issei had other lovers, but they decided to listen. The next one to speak up was the vampire Health. She was also very beautiful. She had massive wings coming out of her back. She was adorned in crimson red robes, and her skin tone was a little bit bluish, but she was still beautiful nonetheless. This was Blood Queen Lonathal. Blood Queen Lonathal, it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. I am also one of Issei's queens. I am Blood Queen Lonathal. 2 more women stepped forward. They were both elves. The first one wore dark armor, while the second wore crimson and gold armor. The one in the dark armor stepped forward first and introduced herself. Sylvanas. Greetings, it is a pleasure to meet you all. My name is Sylvanas Windrunner. I am another of Issei's queens. The second one stepped forward and also introduced herself. Lady Liadrin. Hello there, my name is Lady Liadrin of the Blood Elves. It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance. I am another of Issei's loyal queens. Just then the sound of wings weapon could be heard. Everyone looked up towards the sky and saw that 2 as women, 1 blue and 1 golden, came down to the ground. They looked just like Valkyries of North's mythology, but they were a bit bigger and roughly the same size as Issei. The 2 of them stepped forward and introduced themselves as Valkyrie, while the blue one with white wings stepped forward first. Sisters Fallon. Greetings, I am a Valkyrie in service to the Lich King, but I am also one of his lovely queens. My name is Fallon. It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Then another elf, this time with purple skin and maroon violet-like armor and robes, carrying a long purple staff, came forth and spoke. Thalyssra. Hello, I am First Arsonist Thalyssra of the Nightborn. I am a loyal servant and one of the lovely queens to the Lich King Issei Hayadu. I hope we all get along. Everyone was staring with wide eyes and their mouths wide open. Shock and utter disbelief was all anyone could see across their faces. Issei then proceeded to put back on the helm of domination. He then raised Frostmourne, pointing it across the field. All of a sudden dark energy poured out from the blade and a portal opened up. Issei then turned to everybody, motioning them to come with him so he could explain everything. Issei, come with me, I will explain everything about what happened to me, how I'm alive somewhat, and where I got this power from. Rias Albiet timidly asked where they were going. Rias, I see. Where are we going? Issei, we are going to my new home. Follow me to Ice-Crowned Citadel. The group then looked towards one another, and then they all nodded their heads. They continued to walk forward with Issei and the others back towards the frozen wastelands of Northrend. Soon all would be explained, and soon the world and all of Issei's enemies, past, present, and the future, would know inferior the name Lich King. Thanks for watching this video. You really enjoy this video. Like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow Tristanbukin for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.